You believe people leave when conflict becomes loud. You believe relationships break when arguments explode. You believe power shifts when someone openly withdraws. You are wrong. By the time distance becomes visible, the psychological shift already happened. The real change begins the moment you stop being available. And most people never understand why everything feels different after that. Welcome to Purely Noetical. On this channel, we study power, strategy, and human behavior through the lens of psychological realism. Not fantasy, not emotional comfort, but truth about how human nature actually works. Today, you will understand why stopping your constant availability changes how people treat you, how they perceive you, and how they respond to you. You will understand projection. You will understand psychic energy. You will understand individuation. And you will understand why withdrawal, when done correctly, is not manipulation, but psychological alignment. Before we continue, this is educational. This is not teaching you to play games. This is not encouraging you to hurt people emotionally. This is about understanding psychological structure so that you can operate with clarity and integrity. Now listen carefully. Carl Jung explained that most human relationships are not fully conscious. People believe they are interacting with each other directly, but much of what happens between them is unconscious. In the Archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung described projection as a basic psychological process. Projection happens when a person unconsciously places parts of their own mind onto someone else. These parts can be desires, fears, expectations, insecurities, admiration, or unresolved emotional wound. When you are always available, you become a stable surface for those projections. You answer quickly. You respond emotionally. You show up every time. You adjust yourself to maintain connection. Because of this consistency, the other person unconsciously builds an image of you that supports their internal world. They do not only relate to who you are, they relate to who they imagine you to be. That imagined version of you becomes psychologically useful to them. It gives them comfort. It gives them reassurance. It gives them stability. They begin to depend not only on your presence but on the version of you that exists in their mind. This is important to understand. They are not attached only to you. They are attached to their projection. Now observe what happens when you stop being available. You do not argue. You do not explain. You simply reduce your emotional access. You reduce your immediate responses. You stop overextending. The projection suddenly loses support. The unconscious image they created of you no longer matches reality. This creates tension inside them. That tension is not always visible, but it is real. They may feel confused. They may feel irritated. They may feel drawn towards you again. They may even feel unexpected respect. But something changes. Why? Because projection requires participation. If you do not participate, the projection weakens. In the relations between the ego and the unconscious, Carl Jung explains that the mind does not operate randomly. It moves according to energy. Wherever your attention goes, your psychological energy follows. And wherever that energy goes repeatedly, patterns begin to form. Attention may seem small, but it is not small. It is focus. It is emotional investment. It is care. When you repeatedly give someone your time, your reassurance, your explanations, your quick replies, and your emotional support, you are not just being kind. You are investing energy into a system between you and that person. That system begins to rely on your contribution. Think of a relationship as something that balances itself. When both people are contributing awareness, responsibility, and self-control, the balance is stable. But when one person constantly supplies reassurance, emotional calming, or validation, the balance depends heavily on that one source. Over time, this becomes normal. The other person may not even realize they have come to depend on your constant availability. It feels natural to them. It feels expected. So when you continue giving attention and emotional effort without pause, you are holding the system in place. You are maintaining its balance. You are making sure it does not shake. Even if there are weaknesses, your steady input keeps them hidden. Now, consider what happens when you reduce that input. You do not attack. You do not accuse. You simply stop overextending. You stop responding instantly. You stop over-explaining. You stop rushing to calm every discomfort. The system begins to shift. If the relationship was built mostly on hidden dependency, instability shows up quickly. The other person may feel anxious, confused, or irritated. They may ask what is wrong. They may attempt to pull you back into your previous role. The reason is simple. They were leaning more than they realized. Your constant availability had become part of their emotional support. But if the relationship was built on awareness and responsibility from both sides, something different happens. Instead of collapsing, it adjusts. The other person regulates themselves. They respect your space. They do not panic. They do not assume abandonment. In this case, the relationship matures. It becomes healthier because it is no longer based on unconscious reliance, but on choice. That is the dividing line. Withdrawal does not destroy strong structures. It exposes weak ones. Now we move deeper into Jung's central idea, individuation. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole. It means becoming who you truly are beneath expectations, social roles, and the need for approval. From childhood, people learn to adapt in order to be accepted. They shape their behavior to fit family patterns, cultural expectations, and peer pressure. Over time, many people lose touch with their real center. They become versions of themselves designed to maintain belonging. Individuation requires separating from that automatic shaping. It means asking difficult questions. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when I am not trying to please? What parts of myself have I hidden to avoid rejection? Jung spoke about the shadow, which includes the parts of you that you ignore or suppress. This may include anger, insecurity, fear, ambition, or even strength that you were taught to hide. Individuation means acknowledging these parts instead of pretending they do not exist. It means accepting your weaknesses without being controlled by them. It means standing in your own identity rather than constantly adjusting it to meet someone else's comfort. When you are always available because you want to be liked, needed, or approved of, you postpone this process. You continue shaping yourself around other people's expectations. You answer quickly, not because it is necessary, but because you fear losing connection. You offer reassurance, not because it is balanced, but because you fear being replaced. Slowly, your identity becomes organized around maintaining acceptance. In that state, you may become important to others, but not truly respected. You may be present in their lives, but they may not see your full depth. They see the version of you that is convenient and predictable. You become necessary in function, but unclear in identity. The moment individuation begins, something shifts inside you. You start becoming comfortable with silence. You stop measuring your value by how often someone reaches out. You do not panic when there is distance. You no longer rush to fill every gap with explanation. You begin to trust that your worth does not decrease when you are not constantly visible. You respond because you choose to respond, not because you are afraid not to. You engage because you want to, not because you are trying to secure approval. Most importantly, you stop sacrificing your inner stability to maintain someone else's comfort. This internal shift is quiet but powerful. It is not dramatic, it is not loud. But once it happens, the way you relate to others changes naturally. You are no longer operating from fear of losing connection. You are operating from a centered place. And when that happens, the balance of every relationship adjusts around your new center. As this inner shift begins to take place, something changes on the outside without you forcing it. Your availability decreases, not in a dramatic way, not in a cold way, not in a way designed to make someone chase you. It decreases naturally. You respond when necessary, but not instantly out of fear. You show up, but not at the cost of your own stability. You listen, but you do not carry emotions that are not yours. You care, but you do not overextend to secure approval. This reduction does not come from strategy. It comes from independence. When you are no longer emotionally dependent on someone's attention, praise, or reassurance, your behavior becomes calmer. You are not watching your phone with tension. You are not adjusting your words to avoid losing them. You are not trying to maintain constant emotional contact to feel safe. And humans sense this. People instinctively notice when someone does not psychologically cling. They may not be able to explain it clearly, but they feel the difference. There is less urgency in you, less neediness, less pressure. Your presence becomes steady instead of seeking. Machiavelli observed that people attach when it benefits them and detach when it no longer does. Their loyalty shifts based on advantage and perception. Thomas Hobbes described human beings as driven by insecurity and the instinct to protect themselves. Both thinkers understood that human behavior is deeply connected to fear, benefit, and survival. Jung goes further. He explains that much of this insecurity is not fully conscious. People are often unaware of how much they depend on others for emotional balance. They believe they are simply interacting, but beneath the surface, they may be relying on someone else to regulate their mood, calm their anxiety, or confirm their worth. When someone senses that you do not psychologically need them, it interrupts this pattern. If you are not reacting strongly, not chasing, not demanding reassurance, they begin to reassess their position. If your emotional reactions are measured and controlled, they cannot predict you through weakness. If your presence is steady but not constantly offered, they no longer feel that automatic access to your attention. In many relationships, one person unconsciously becomes the stabilizer. They calm tension. They provide reassurance. They fill silence. They respond quickly to prevent distance. Over time, this role becomes expected. If you were playing that role without realizing it, your withdrawal creates space, and space is uncomfortable for many people. In that space, there is no immediate reassurance, no instant emotional cushion, no quick response to remove uncertainty. The other person must sit with their own thoughts. They must manage their own insecurity. They must confront their own need for validation. Some people grow in that space. They become more responsible for their emotions. They learn to stand on their own stability. They respect your boundaries and adjust in a healthy way. Some people become defensive. They accuse. They try to pull you back into your previous role. They may interpret your calmness as rejection because they were used to you regulating their emotions. But no one remains unaffected. When psychological dependency is exposed, something must change. Now, understand something critical. Withdrawal only produces healthy change when it comes from internal strength. If you withdraw to punish someone, it becomes a silent weapon. The intention is control, and control creates tension. If you withdraw to test loyalty, it reveals insecurity. You are still dependent on the reaction. You are simply hiding it. If you withdraw to provoke jealousy or to create fear of losing you, it becomes manipulation. It may produce short-term reaction, but it does not create respect or growth. True withdrawal that changes dynamics comes from self-control and clarity. It comes from knowing you can be alone without collapsing. It comes from not needing constant reassurance to feel stable. It comes from choosing connection, not clinging to it. When withdrawal is rooted in strength, it does not feel dramatic. It feels calm. It feels grounded. It feels natural. And that kind of calm distance forces reality to surface. It reveals who was connected to you by awareness and who was connected to you by dependency. That is the difference. That is where maturity begins. But if you withdraw because you are centered, because you are aligned, because you are no longer willing to overextend beyond your integrity, then your presence becomes different, calmer, more stable, less reactive. Jung wrote extensively in Ion about integrating the shadow. When you integrate your shadow, you no longer deny your neediness, your fear of abandonment, or your desire for approval. You acknowledge them and bring them under conscious control. As a result, you stop acting from unconscious desperation. When desperation decreases, availability decreases naturally. And when availability decreases naturally, your value perception changes. This is not mysticism. It is psychology. People respect what appears internally stable. They chase what is not easily controlled. They become cautious around what does not overreact. When you stop being constantly available, you signal emotional self-sufficiency. Emotional self-sufficiency communicates strength. Strength alters perception. and perception alters behavior. Now reflect deeply. Where in your life are you over-available? Where are you responding instantly out of fear of being forgotten? Where are you offering emotional labor to maintain relevance? And what would change if you pulled your energy back and invested it in your own development? Understand this clearly. Stopping constant availability does not mean becoming distant, harsh, or emotionally closed. It does not mean ignoring people. It does not mean pretending not to care. It does not mean building walls to avoid vulnerability. It means becoming conscious. It means you are no longer operating on automatic response. You are no longer replying out of fear. You are no longer saying yes because silence makes you anxious. You are no longer over-explaining to prevent misunderstanding. You are no longer giving more than is required just to secure your place. Becoming conscious means there is a pause between stimulus and response. Someone reaches out. You decide when and how to respond, not based on panic, not based on insecurity, but based on clarity. Someone becomes distant. You do not immediately chase to close the gap. You observe. You remain steady. You respond if it aligns with your values, not because you feel threatened. Choosing when to engage instead of reacting automatically changes your entire presence. Automatic reactions are driven by fear of loss, fear of rejection, or fear of being replaced. Conscious engagement is driven by stability. You act because you choose to, not because you feel compelled to. It also means allowing relationships to exist without feeding them with insecurity. Many connections survive on constant reassurance, constant texting, constant emotional checking, constant proof of importance. Remove those constant signals, and insecurity rises. But if a relationship can only survive with non-stop validation, it is not stable. It is dependent. When you stop feeding that insecurity, you allow the relationship to stand on its real foundation. If it is strong, it remains. If it is weak, it shakes. Either way, you gain clarity. Now, consider what happens internally. When you become psychologically whole, your presence changes. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means you are aware of your fears, your desires, your weaknesses, and your strengths. You do not deny them, and you are not controlled by them. You are comfortable being alone with your thoughts. You are not desperate for distraction. You do not measure your worth by how often someone contacts you. You do not feel erased when attention shifts. That stability gives your presence weight. People can feel when someone is centered. There is less urgency in their tone, less tension in their behavior, less need to prove something. Conversations become calmer, boundaries become clearer, reactions become measured. When your presence carries weight, you do not need to demand attention. You do not interrupt to be heard. You do not create drama to stay relevant. You do not exaggerate emotions to secure importance. You also stop competing for validation. You are not comparing your position to others. You are not seeking constant confirmation that you matter. You know your value without needing it repeated daily. And because you are not chasing attention, attention responds differently to you. Your absence becomes noticeable, not because you are playing games, not because you are trying to create fear, but because when you were present, you were stable, you were grounded, you were consistent without being desperate. When someone solid steps back, the difference is felt. The room feels different. The conversation feels different. The dynamic shifts. That is the power of conscious availability. You are there because you choose to be. And when you are not there, it is not a performance. It is simply the natural rhythm of someone who is whole. This is the deeper truth. When you stop being available in ways that drain you, everything changes because you change. Projection weakens. Dependency is exposed. Individuation accelerates. And the dynamics reorganize around your new center of gravity. If this message forced you to confront something uncomfortable, that is the point. Growth begins where illusion ends. Comment below where you need to reclaim your energy. Subscribe if you are committed to mastering human behavior through awareness, not manipulation. This channel is a growing archive of psychological and strategic understanding. Study it carefully, apply it slowly, and continue building internal power. Because the person who is whole is never desperate, and the person who is never desperate is never controlled.